Hi, I'd like to start this video by asking you some really tough questions that I think are worth asking and answering. Ready? Here we go. First, are you tired of playing small? Has the pain of trying to fit into other people's ideas of who you are and what's acceptable become unbearable? Have you had enough of worrying about whether or not what the world thinks of you and whether or not the world will be able to handle your big full self if you ever have the courage to share it with them? Are you sick of stretching in one area of your life only to feel like you're holding yourself back in others? And have you ever done something bold to shake things up and fallen in love with your life and yourself while you're in the middle of that grand experiment? But when it was over, all of the epiphanies and the transformations evaporated, and you found yourself the same old person, stuck in the same old life in the same old rut. And would you like to be the bigger, bolder, wiser, stronger, more present you, the you know you truly are, but you don't know where to start? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I am so glad you're here, because I'm hoping this video will be one that's very important to you. Because I've been exactly where you are, and I was there much longer than I ever thought I would be, and I know how painful that place is. And I know how lonely it is to be there and feel like no one else in the world is going through what you're going through. So I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Christine Goad, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about how things started to change for me and the long journey I've come from that place to being the person who's sitting here making this video for you. So my story starts somewhere in the fall of 1997. I was 28 years old, I was obese, I had asthma, and I was absolutely flailing. I was working as a seasonal beach ranger for the town I lived in, but that job was wrapping up for the season, and I had no direction for my life, and I was desperate to find one, not just for the short term, but for the long term. And amazingly, I saw an ad in the newspaper for a cross-country bicycle trip the following summer, and I just knew that I had to do that. I didn't own a bike, and I had never cycled more than 20 miles in a day, and yet there was absolutely no question in my mind that I was going to sign up for this ride because I knew it was going to be the adventure of a lifetime. And testing myself against this big, audacious challenge so far outside of my comfort zone was exactly what I needed to shake up my life, to build some more self-confidence, and to help me find my purpose. As it turned out, it would be the biggest cross-country bike event in American history. It was 48 days, 3,254 miles. By the official count, and 730 cyclists and surprises around every corner. It was the kind of life-shaping journey that would give me the time and space I needed to finally figure out who I truly was and what I should really truly be doing with my life. It was the catalyzing event I felt I'd been preparing for my entire life, even though I had no idea that it would be a cross-country bike trip. So up until then, I'd been a good girl, right? I had been jumping through all the hoops I was supposed to jump through, I was checking off all the boxes, and I was really trying to manifest some of that potential that I had been told my whole life I had. I had earned degrees from prestigious universities, I'd found the guy I was going to marry, I'd had fiction and poetry and even really boring articles about air cargo published. I was supposed to be on my way, and yet I had no idea where I was going. I don't know, maybe you can relate to that in some way. And I also had just so many interests, I couldn't decide which ones to follow. None of the boxes seemed to be made for me, so I kept trying to fit myself into other people's boxes, trying to be what other people expected, and especially trying to make myself small enough to not intimidate anyone else. And I was world class at all of that. When it came to being a good girl, I was the best, and yet I was absolutely miserable. I could only stay in any given box for so long before I had to flee, and I would just burst out in search of a full breath of air somewhere where the pain wasn't. And it was just this pattern of jumping from box to box, trying to figure out where I fit. And I don't know, maybe you've had those moments too where you just felt like you lost yourself and you just started following the script. You felt like your life had written for you. You find yourself becoming someone different based on the situation you're in any given moment. So there's the work you, there's the wife, girlfriend, partner you, the church you, the mom you, the daughter you, and each you has its own nuance depending on the company that you're in. So why is that? Why is it so hard to find and hold on to our true self? And once we've found her, why do we hide the person we are at the core? Why do we downplay our gifts and our talents to fit in with our surroundings? And why do we play small so everyone else feels comfortable, but we're miserable? Why are we so afraid the world won't be able to handle us exactly as we are? Amazing, one of a kind, gorgeous, and yes, wonderfully flawed. And yet, I know you've seen women who seem to have that calm confidence wherever they are. You know the ones I'm talking about, and you've probably wondered, as I have, how did they get there? And the answer is choice. There was a moment in time where those women chose to draw a line in the sand and figure it out for themselves. They made a decision to do something different, something challenging and outside their comfort zone. And they took matters into their own hands and created their own catalyzing event. Some of them jumped out of airplanes, some of them jumped out of marriages or jobs or both. Some of them sought out a supportive group of people where they could drop their guard and let go and just be vulnerable in a safe environment and figure out who they truly were at the core. Regardless of what it was, there was some kind of catalyzing moment that shifted everything for them. But as you probably noticed, those moments don't present themselves very often. And when they do, there's usually a small window of time in which you can recognize and grab onto them. And I grabbed on to the GTE Big Ride Across America like it was a life raft. Yeah, it took a little bit of courage, but it was mostly a great deal of naivete and a huge amount of stupidity that let me choose to do that ride. But it was fueled by this desperate hope that this would be the thing that would finally help me be fully me in the world, no matter what the circumstances, no matter where I found myself, and no matter who I was with. That leap of faith was going to be the experience I needed in order to finally find the box where I fit. I was going to start living the bigger life I knew I was born for. What I didn't recognize consciously at the time was that it was also my safe place in which to fail. Because the ride was so far outside of my previous experience, there was no expectation that I would excel at it. In fact, there was a real question about whether I could finish it, let alone succeed, or thrive. But because no one knew me, I could be completely self-determined in every moment. How freeing is that, right? I could say I was one thing and then immediately change my mind. I could try things on and see how they felt. I could color outside the lines. I could make a mess, and I could just play. And it was the most freeing experience. And I'd like to ask you, when was the last time you gave yourself permission to do something like that, to just explore who you are? It's probably been longer than it should be. And for me, it was terrifying and it was thrilling, and I loved every minute of it. Even the minutes I absolutely hated. It turned out to be the best, messiest, most empowering, most awesome failure of my life, and I will never get tired of talking about it because I learned the most valuable lessons of my life there, of my adult life. And I'm still learning them, even as I am preparing this website. I have been learning new things from that trip. So I loved it, clearly. And one of the things I learned was to trust myself and my decisions. I learned that I could contribute to the community from anywhere I was in that community, from, being on my bike to being in a SAG bus. It didn't matter. I could contribute. And I learned that comparing myself to anyone else was not only counterproductive, it was actually dangerous. And most importantly, this is the real big one, I learned that I liked myself and that I was more than enough. And then, suddenly, even though I could count to 48, day 48 showed up and the ride ended. And even though I knew it was coming, it was like this Gestalt, one of those Gestalt images where first you see the young woman and then you see the old woman. That happened for me full on in my life. It just Gestalt switched. And my perspective shifted, and the picture I had of myself, as fine as I was, completely evaporated. And suddenly I could only see myself as I imagined other people saw me, and I was embarrassed of the decisions I had made and of who I was, and I just felt like I was so not enough. I couldn't figure out how to bring the confident, articulate, relaxed me from the big ride home into my real world. Even though she was this close, I couldn't bring her home. And it was absolutely excruciating. And I fell into a severe depression that lasted for several years as I tried to figure out how to bring her home, how to bring her into my everyday life and feel that sense of calm and confidence and okayness. I went back to working jobs that were not fulfilling. My weight skyrocketed. My bike leaned against a kitchen wall, taunting me and collecting dust because I didn't have the courage to get back out on it. And the simplest daily tasks became almost too much to bear. In short, fear completely took over my life. And in the decades since, I've been obsessed with thinking about why the transformation I felt on the big ride didn't stick. And how many transformative experiences have I had since then that were great, and while I was immersed in them, and then they vanished as soon as I got home and went back into work on Monday and sank back into my everyday routine. Has that happened to you? Has it happened more than once? Maybe you've gone on the trip of a lifetime, or you've taken a life-changing class, or you've trained for and raced your first marathon or your first triathlon. Maybe you fought like hell and beat cancer. And for a brief moment, you were someone else, right? A better, stronger, smarter, more present form of yourself. Remember what that felt like? It was exhilarating, right? And now it's mostly just a memory. The problem of why people bottom out after peak experiences has haunted me ever since the big ride ended, and I've dedicated myself to finding a solution. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But I've read about Olympic athletes who become depressed and they stop training even after they've won. They just won a gold medal, and they go home and they sit on the couch and they eat pizza and ice cream. And we've all heard stories about soldiers who struggle to feel as fully alive and fully themselves after they leave service and return to their civilian lives. So it's not unusual for dips to happen after the peak experience. The Olympic athletes and the soldiers, they might be extreme examples of heroic achievement and commitment, but I think that they parallel the experiences we all have when we push ourselves out of our comfort zones for even a brief period and try on a new vision for our lives. So, ready for some stupidly obvious truth after all of these years of searching? Hold on to your seat. Here comes the stupid, obvious truth. What I've come to realize is that the true transformation, the life change, doesn't happen until the potentially life-changing event is over and you actually change your life. See? Stupidly obvious. And yet no one tells you. It's certainly not common knowledge. Finishing the marathon, climbing that mountain, jumping out of that airplane, it isn't enough. Yes, those things change you, but the only way to hold on to those changes and keep the momentum up is to consciously engage with the new vision of yourself for an extended period of time, and to surround yourself with supportive, encouraging, safe people who understand what you've been through, who can remind you of who you really are, who you were when you stood on the top of Kilimanjaro, who you were when you finished, that marathon and crossed that line. And they can support you as you dance with the decisions that are in front of you in your real everyday life. And they can help support you as you look forward and think about what you want your life to look and sound and smell and feel and even taste like after your life-changing event is over. That's how you cultivate and continue down the path of the bigger, bolder, wiser, stronger, more present you. If you simply do your event and then go back home to your island, which is what I did and a lot of people do, you go back to your same old routine, the new you will fade to a distant memory, and before long it'll become just another regret to look back on. And yes, it takes a lot of work and conscious effort to redesign your life, and that starts well before you ever set off on your amazing journey, and it continues long after you get back. But nobody tells you that. No one tells you that the questions you ask and the mindset you have while you're pursuing your life-changing experience will be a major determiner of your well-being and the depth and breadth of your transformation after it's all over. Here's the kicker. I was asking myself the wrong question for 7 weeks while I was on that bike. No wonder I didn't understand the answers I received. No wonder I fell into that depression. Because no one tells you that what you do after the event is even more important than the preparation you do before it, or even the work you do during it. And that's why I'm telling you now. So when the next catalyzing opportunity presents itself, you'll be ready. Because the big ride I did was a major fundraising event for the American Lung Association, and we had wonderful support from the time we signed up about how to train, how to fundraise, what to pack, how to hydrate and manage nutrition, and to some degree even what to expect on an emotional level while we were on the ride. And on the ride itself, there were daily maps, and there were evening briefings, and there were weather and temperature forecasts, and water stops, and pit stops, and there were support and gear vehicles, and there were road signs, and there were motorcycle support to keep us safe in dangerous intersections. So we had an army of volunteers and staff who were all there to keep us fed and entertained and informed and safe and happy. But nobody prepared me for what to do on day 49, the day I woke up and I didn't have breakfast with 730 people anymore, and the ride was over. Nobody prepared me for that. Nobody prepared me for the week I went home, or for nobody prepared me for how to deal with my first month back in my real life. No one offered any advice on how to unpack everything I'd learned on the ride, or how to integrate it into my everyday thinking and actions. No one even pointed out that the distinction I felt between my big ride self and my real life self was an illusion, and that much of the pain I was feeling actually came from believing things that weren't supporting me. And I don't want that to happen to you. And if it's happened to you, I don't want it to ever happen again. So let's fast forward 20 years to today. And it has taken me writing and publishing a book about the Big Ride experience, talking with multiple therapists about it, and 2 decades of conscious effort to feel like I've finally really truly integrated my Big Ride self and my real life self. And after wrestling with the problem for 20 years, I finally have a handle on what it takes to make a potentially life-changing experience into an experience that actually changes your life in a lasting and meaningful way. It's become my mission to help women who have lived by the rules and who've done all the things that were expected of them. They've checked all the boxes and jumped through all the hoops, and they've lost parts of themselves to the expectations of others. It's my mission to help them rekindle their sense of adventure and rediscover their sense of self, and to explore beyond their current boundaries, to test their edges and to see what's truly possible for them. So if you feel like you're at a crossroads or a turning point and you're searching for that catalyzing experience, you're in the right place, because I can help you save years of pain and disappointment. You can start living your bigger, bolder, more fully you right now. Because to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Big Ride, I want to do something memorable, a little bit dangerous, fun, and full of beauty. And I started talking to friends and colleagues about this last year, actually, trying to get ready for this. And I mentioned things that I wanted to do, like maybe skydiving or bungee jumping, but they just felt so cliche and so midlife crisis-ish. So I was encouraged to think bigger, and I started thinking something more adventurous, like maybe an African safari or exploring the Galapagos Islands. And those are definitely on my bucket list, but neither of them really have the sense of challenge that I'm looking for at this point in my life. So finally, it hit me. Something that encapsulated everything we'd listed. It was memorable. It was fun. It was a bit dangerous. In fact, it scares the hell out of me. And at the same time, it's in a breathtakingly beautiful place. So I'm going to learn to surf, which is the thing I am most afraid to learn. And I'm going to take a small group of amazing women who are ready to say yes to a bigger, bolder life with me. And together we're going to learn to surf the waves, but we're also going to learn to surf our edges in all areas of our lives for the rest of our lives. Awesome, right? So here's the thing. If giving yourself the gift of going on a surfing safari or a surfing adventure with a small group of women, and then coming home and turning a new page and living out loud, if that scares you a little bit, that's a good thing, because that's not fear. That feeling is your call to adventure. Because here's the secret behind the Surfing Your Edge experience. We're gonna learn to surf, but this really isn't about learning to surf. So what is Surfing Your Edge? Surfing Your Edge is only one aspect of this life-enhancing trip. Surfing Your Edge is about consistently testing the boundaries of your comfort zone. So you're always growing and challenging yourself in ways that are meaningful for you. And so you're excited and you're engaged in all areas of your life. And so you feel you're truly being yourself and bringing the best parts of you to the world. And Surfing Your Edge is about refusing to play small. It's about refusing to stand on the shore and watch the waves roll in while you wish you had the courage to go out and play. It's about feeling the rush of balancing on your board, on your wave, on your edge, and having the strength and the willingness to hold a bigger vision of your real power, your true capacity, your innate, unique beauty that you really can't escape. It's there whether you want to see it or not. It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and learning to trust that you have everything you need to thrive regardless of the circumstances. And it's about learning to trust your instincts, to open to your creativity, and let go of the fear that if you let the real you show, you will be too much for the world to handle. So, having said all of that, I think it's important that I let you know what Surfing Your Edge is not. It's not about thrill-seeking or about being an adrenaline junkie. It's not about change for the sake of change. It's not about always feeling that you need to be better or other than you are right now. It's not about accepting dares or comparing yourself to anyone else. And while I say that it's about learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable, it's definitely not about feeling unsafe. It's not about choosing to put yourself into dangerous situations without concern for your well-being. and it's definitely not about taking unnecessary risks. So, here we go. Here's my challenge and my invitation to you. If you're tired of the risk and then retreat back to comfort cycle that you're in, it's time to take a risk and stay in that uncomfortable place long enough to get comfortable. Are you ready to expand your comfort zone and keep it expanded so that it actually grows? And instead of having different ideas about who you are, different identities, different ways of being, and different comfort zones for each of the various parts of your life, are you ready to surf your edge and figure out how to merge all of those lovely and messy parts of you into one big authentic self everywhere you go? If you are, then you just may be the person I created the Surfing Your Edge experience for. We're going to be a group of beginning surfers taking daily surf lessons with an instructor and gaining confidence in the water and on the board and in our own bodies, but it doesn't stop there. Based on the interests of the group, we're also going to be using that safe space we create to play with our comfort levels in several other anxiety-prone areas. So it could be things like improv or burlesque dancing, singing, or extemporaneous speaking, all things that tend to raise your blood pressure a little bit. So if that scares you, good, because it scares me too. But haven't we just figured out that facing our fears equals freedom? We'll get through this together, and we'll embrace it, and we'll love doing it, and we will laugh, and it will be fantastic, and it will change your life permanently for good. And we will also have the safety net of knowing that we're in a non-judgmental, supportive group of women who are cheering every baby step we're willing to take. Everyone. And we will lift each other up, and we will champion every effort. So you will not be alone, and you will not be judged. You will be supported at every moment. But it gets better even than that. The truly amazing thing about the Surfing Your Edge retreat is that you will get your transformation, and you will take it home with you, and you will actually transform your life after the retreat is over. So instead of going home and telling a few people about the great trip you had learning to surf and watching them, flip through a week's worth of photos on your cell phone in 60 seconds and then, falling back into your usual routine, you will actually make real concrete changes in your everyday life that reinforce the work you did on the retreat. And they will empower you to keep surfing your edge in all of your comfort zones, in whatever areas of your life you choose. Because there will be 3 months of post-adventure structured support to help you integrate what you learned on the retreat into your daily life, and so that you can take your travel self and integrate it into your real life self. You won't be going it alone. It will be a group adventure. And you just may find that you have a group of lifelong friends who are ready to support you with every wave you ever choose to surf. So that's the why and the how I got here. Are you ready for all of the amazing details of this experience? I hope so. If you are, please read on below. It will tell you all about what's included and how we will accomplish what we're setting out to accomplish. And I look forward to talking to you very soon. Thanks so much.